So how's this for an Instagram cliche saying? If you dwell on your problems will become your new dwelling. Huh? Pretty good, right? Hello everyone, welcome into another episode of the Story Lesson Advice Podcast, part of Saturday is Dadderday Media. Life advice podcast, cooking videos, product reviews, book reviews, all in due time. Thank you very much for listening. You can find my YouTube channel and Instagram channel at Saturday is Dadderday Media on Instagram and YouTube. Okay, so we'll get right into it. I said the funny cliche thing here, if you dwell on your problems will become your new dwelling. And I have a personal story about that. Some of you know our family moved to Phoenix about a year and a half ago from the date of recording. And when we moved, we knew it was going to be a big leap. And we moved for my wife's career and totally happy for all of that. And when we got here, we have this house and our family lives in it. Grandma lives with us for the time being. And as we moved on through the year, my wife, really enjoys her job. She's really started to do well there. Our daughter loves her school, has made a lot of friends. We've made a fair amount of friends as far as, other parents and all of that stuff. My mom settled right in, found a new job real close to home and a great schedule for her and everything. So everybody's doing well. And even for me, my company was kind enough to let me, they kind of created like a hybrid role for me and just said, let's take a year and figure it out. But, we want to keep you on as part of the team. So all of that is wonderful. And for me, I think one of the things I've struggled with for a long time, curious if you have ever felt this way or when you feel this way, how you work through it. But I had a tendency to focus on the negative. And over the last year and a half or so, I think I have become elite at focusing on the negative. I'm not one to be an over-the-top optimist either, but I think I have spent way too much time focusing on negative stuff, and that has just fed into itself. And as I sit here sort of paying the price for all of my bad choices that were largely driven by my own frustration and my own unwillingness to look at anything other than the negative, it sort of dawned on me that, man, I have spent a lot of time focusing on all the things that I said were quote unquote wrong with my life and our life and my job and, all of that I completely have skipped right past all the amazing, wonderful things. And by focusing just on all this negative stuff, some of which is true and some of which is just sort of made up in my head, that I've just sort of fed that. And I have just, given into my vices and just sitting around and, eating like crap and not exercising consistently and not doing as many productive things as I could and not being focused at work the way I needed to be. I spent so much time over the last year or so, complaining to my wife or my friends or my coworkers, anybody that would listen about how unhappy I was about our living situation or the job I had or the fact that I didn't know anybody or didn't really have any guy friends or whatever. And there's truth in all of that. And it's okay to recognize all of that. But where I made the mistake, and I'll caution as we get on with this to not have you or others make the mistake, is that's where I spent my time. That was my dwelling. And I just sat and focused on my problems. And that was it. And now I am a year and a half on from living here. And everybody is thriving except me. But the reason that I'm not thriving isn't because that the opportunity isn't there or that the situation isn't there or that I haven't have everything at my fingertips. The reason I'm not thriving is because I've continued to make one bad choice after the other that has been driven in large part of me being frustrated for some reason or no reason and choosing to just live there. And that I think is an incredibly dangerous thing to do long term. And I can already see the negative ramifications with my health and with my mental health. And unfortunately, and fortunately, I think there's a valuable lesson to be learned. All right, and now it's time for this week's sponsor, I Wish I Had. And boy, oh boy, does this just broadcast to the world, send out the bat signal to the world of how old I am getting. This week's sponsor, I Wish I Had, is Dr. Scholl's Go ahead and laugh. I'll pause. Dr. Scholl's plantar fasciitis all-day pain relief orthotics sole inserts. Go ahead and laugh again. All right, so the reason that I stumbled upon these a couple of years ago was, as the name implies, I had considerable amount of pain with plantar fasciitis, or maybe it wasn't that, maybe it was just bad stretching and carrying too much weight on me, or doing workouts that I wasn't supposed to do, or whatever. However, I stumbled upon these after doing some research, and Dr. Scholl's, they make a ton of inserts, and you can find them anywhere. And there's different kinds of inserts for athletics or for all day or for women or for men or this or that. The one that I found was the plantar fasciitis all day pain relief. And it really has a good amount of arch support and is super comfortable. So what I have done over time is purchase these to put in almost all of my shoes. So they go in my workout shoes and all the shoes that I would wear, just bumming around on a weekend or on a date night. And in a couple of semi-formal-ish pair of shoes, I've put them in and they've worked as well. I haven't found a way that they work in like a pair of like straight-up dress shoes, but I have replaced virtually all of the insoles of my shoes with these. And what's convenient about it, the way that you do it, is you take your insole out of your current shoe and you kind of put them on top of each other like this, and then you just use a pair of scissors at home and you cut around to kind of trim the Dr. Scholl's one, the new one that's going in, and then you put the new one in and that's it. But instantly that can give your shoes new life. It really reduced the amount of pain that I had in my feet and my back and my knees, and I cannot recommend them enough for anybody. And especially if you're on your feet all day, or you're working a job where there's a lot of manual labor, or if you're doing workouts and maybe you're getting a little older and you want a little extra support, I think these are a fantastic way. So I actually have a link to them in the description of the podcast. It is an affiliate link for me through Amazon to be able to purchase these, which is where I have purchased them in the past. And they are called the Dr. Scholl's Plantar Fasciitis All-Day Pain Relief Orthotics. However, they also have a whole bunch of different types of insoles for different types of activity for men and women, like I said. So give them a try. This week's sponsor, I wish I had, Dr. Scholl's Plantar Fasciitis All-Day Pain Relief Orthotics. Okay, so I gave you the story that you might have heard before if you listen to the podcast regularly, that our family moved to Phoenix about a year and a half ago from Texas, and it's been a wonderful transition for all of us, including myself. However, I have chosen to spend much of that time focused on the negative aspects of my life, the quote-unquote negative aspects, which are just things that I don't love as much as I would like to, or things I wish were different. But I've chosen to spend too much time focused on negative things. And what that has done, the lesson that I have learned, there's a couple lessons. First, the more that I tend to focus on it, the bigger that these manufactured problems in my head become. And a simple example that we can all relate to is, let's say you get in an argument with your spouse, your significant other, or a coworker, or something like that, and you replay it over and over in your head. And if you kind of watch yourself, you can notice that your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate increases, you're just getting kind of just wound up, you're getting all jazzed up. And then when you kind of snap out of it and you realize, like, okay, let me stop for a second here, then your body kind of comes back down to earth. So that is really what's been happening to me, is I've allowed myself to get really worked up about small and trivial and meaningless things. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. In 20 years from now, it certainly won't matter. So why am I getting upset now? And I think the reason that I'm choosing to focus on being so upset is I think ultimately I kind of feel lost. And when some people can maybe feel lost, or they're not really sure what's next in their life, or they're not really sure what's the next step of work or family or relationship or life or whatever, you tend to kind of grab onto whatever you can. And for me, what I chose to do is just focus on things that I didn't like because there was unknown. And instead of just sitting with the unknown and just moving forward in life, I've chose to focus on the negative parts of that, or small little inconveniences that are nothing at the end of the day. I've chosen to make a big deal in my head. So that is something that I've come to realize. And maybe from the outside looking in, everybody is like, yeah, no shit, Justin. But for me, it was a realization. So I at least feel good about the fact that I recognize that. Now the next step is trying to fix it. And something else I didn't realize until my wife pointed it out was how much of that negativity that I thought I was just kind of keeping to myself, or maybe just talking to my wife about, or one of my friends or whatever, in a controlled environment, like, we're having a conversation about it. I didn't realize, but just how much of my aura was sort of projecting outward onto everybody else around me, my daughter, my mom, my wife, my friends, my work, everything. And even when I wasn't having a conscious conversation about something that I was unhappy with, I was just projecting unhappiness and projecting frustration and being upset and all of that. And I just have turned into not a lot of joy to be around. So that is something else. And boy, what a damn shame to do that to my daughter, right? A 5-year-old girl, just innocent, happy as a clam about everything. And she doesn't need me as a rain cloud in her life for anything. And even though I really focus hard on not trying to get upset with her or yell at her, or if I do, I try to talk to her right away about it and apologize and all that. But just, what a damn shame of me to project all that out. So the reason I'm sharing the story and lesson and advice is, even though it's personal and it might sound a little self-indulgent, I'm trying to share this so that other people, and my daughter one day, if she hears this, can maybe catch herself a few minutes earlier than I've caught myself, and maybe that can be a difference maker. Now it's time for this week's Just the Tip. And this week's Just the Tip is a cooking tip that, as we get into the summer season and any time of the year, but it is my tip to you is to be very aware of matching your cutting board and your knife size to the food product that you are going to be cutting on that cutting board and with that knife. So for example, if you have a apple, or you have a small tomato, or you have strawberries, you can use a small cutting board with a small paring knife. That's great. If you have a watermelon or a cantaloupe or a squash or something like that, you need a big cutting board and you need a big, long knife. And too often, myself included, I'm like, well, I don't want to wash this, or I don't want to try to put it through the dishwasher, or, this is too big of a mess, I don't want to deal with it. I just grab a cutting board the size of a postage stamp and then a tiny little knife, and I try to cut, something way bigger than that. So that is how injuries can happen, and that is how getting very poor cuts and odd shaped sizes and a poor yield out of the food. You're spending all this money on a watermelon at the grocery store. You need to make sure that you get as much of it as you can to be able to use. That's called yield for food, is you get a high yield on that food. So if you have a big watermelon, get a big cutting board, get a big knife. And for a watermelon, I specifically recommend a serrated bread knife, and cut it that way. And you will have plenty of space, just like you cannot stuff all the watermelon that you cut into a very small Tupperware container. You need a big container. Same thing with that. I know it sounds simple, but always go up a size in whatever you think that you're going to need for a cutting board and a knife. And that will help preserve your fingers and it will help make sure that you get a better yield out of your product and a more even set of cuts and all of that sort of stuff. So that is this week's Just the Tip. Match the cutting board and the knife appropriately to the food that you're cutting. All right, so I gave you the story of our family moving here and me choosing to focus on all the negative things. The lessons that I learned, number one, the more I focused on the negative aspects of the move and of our time here, the larger that became and the more consuming that became. And the other lesson that I learned is I was not aware of how much I was outwardly projecting that negativity and that negative vibe and that negative emotion towards everybody in my orbit, even when I wasn't directly complaining or directly talking about it. Just the fact that I was choosing to exist in a largely negative mindset, that just projected outward. And something as simple as dropping a slice of apple on the floor, would just make me mad. So that is a very valuable lesson, to be aware of that and to acknowledge that. And the advice that I would give, and I wrote this down just so I wouldn't stumble my way through it any more than the rest of this podcast, is it's recognize the problem, right? It's okay if you're upset about something. That's what we tell our daughter. Hey, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to feel how you feel. The goal here, obviously, is to work through that so that the next time it's a little bit easier to manage, and next time and next time and next time. But what I've tried to ask myself is, can I fix the problem? So, for example, if I am that unhappy with my job, which I'm not, but as an example, if I was that unhappy about my job, I could try to fix the problem by applying for new jobs and maybe changing my career or changing my job. Technically, something like that, I do have some amount of control over. So I can choose to fix the problem. And if I can't fix the problem, then the option is to fix my attitude. And that is easier said than done. And where I've chosen to focus, as I said, is I think I'm looking at our move over the last year and a half and saying, I can't fix this because we're here and we moved. And I'm glad we did, by the way. But if there's stuff that I'm unhappy about and I can't fix it, then I can just fix my attitude about it. I can see it for what it is. I can realize that it might be part of my life for a little bit or a long bit. And I can adjust the way that I manage that emotion or manage that emotionally and realize that at some point I have to get rid of the grinding my teeth and wringing of my hands and just move on with the rest of my life. So at the end of the day, if there's a problem that I have the opportunity to fix, then I can fix it to some degree or to all the degrees. And if it's something that I cannot fix, that's out of my control, maybe the way that someone perceives me or something else in the universe that I can't directly control, then all I can do is fix my attitude with it. So that is what I've tried to remind myself and try to give myself that advice. And 15 years from now, 10 years from now, if my daughter's feeling the same way, that is the advice I would want to give to her. Hey, if you can fix it, then let's think about a way and try to fix it. And if we can't, then we just have to fix our attitude about it and move forward. That is different than just taking it up the old pooper and, turning the other cheek kind of thing. But at some point you have to realize, hey, I can't do anything about this. I just got to grin and bear it to some degree and move on and focus on other parts of my life. And again, I am not giving a sob story for myself here because I have a wonderful, blessed life, but that is where I've tried to get myself to mentally so I can rise above all of my negativity and a lot of that negative thinking and get to a space where then I can have a better view of what's bothering me and why it's bothering me and try to make real progress towards that. But if I can't get to the point where I'm just stopping being angry, then I'm never going to get to that next level where I can actually work through that stuff and then move forward. All right, and now it's time for this week's Whisper In. And this week's Whisper In is an account on YouTube that I have checked out their videos for several years. And I recently found out that they also have an Instagram account. Like, of course they do, idiot. But for me, I just kind of put two and two together. But I have been watching their videos for years. And the name of the account is called Attractions 360. Attractions 360. And their description in the website says, just two brothers going on epic adventure. They are theme park enthusiasts, travel enthusiasts, hiking, Disney. They are your number one source for attraction videos from around the world in crystal clear, low light, 4K video. For those of you who can't make it out to the parks, we want to bring the fun to you. So, what I really like about this is we have a young daughter and we recently went to Disneyland. And beforehand, I was able to watch some of the rides to make sure, like the ones where you're supposed to be a little older or a little taller, to make sure that they weren't too scary or that they were, they wouldn't scare her too much or freak her out or whatever. And me as well, because holy shit, some of those rides. But they're also really fun to just check out rides that are around the world if you like that kind of stuff. Crazy roller coasters or rides in theme parks that they don't have here in the U.S., all that kind of stuff. So I recommend checking them out. They're fun. Their videos are really good and really in-depth, and that is the best version of what you will see when you're actually on a ride that I've seen over the last 10 years. So Attraction 360 is the account on YouTube and Instagram. Just two brothers going on epic adventures. This week's Whisper In, Attractions 360. All right, as we wrap up another week's episode of the Story Lesson Advice Podcast, thank you so much. If you don't know, This is part of Saturday is Saturday Media. And by the time that this will be released, I will have a series of different series of videos and audio. So I will have this podcast on audio podcast, and then also clips and the full show on my YouTube channel. I will have a book review podcast that's called I Hate Reading. That has been up and running. And that is really a video podcast, but there's also an audio version of that as well. And then I have Bricks and Mortar, which is an ongoing cooking series where I focus on using, incorporating ingredients that promote things like skin health and heart health and hair health and eye health and sexual health and this health and that health and whatever. And then I also have Unbox and Review, an ongoing series on my YouTube channel where I unbox and review products. But the small twist is they are products that I actually use and own. So similar to the sponsor I wish I had that I share every episode on this podcast, these are all products that I have and that I've used and things that I recommend to my friends outside of this. And I thought, that would be a fun way to kind of share that with people if they're looking for something. So all the products that I'm reviewing on Unbox and Review are products that I own and believe in, and that's why I'm choosing to do an unbox and review for you. So I will have 4 different types of content and entertainment going. So thank you, and please check that out at Saturday is Saturday Media on Instagram and YouTube. All right, to wrap this up, we talked about the story. We talked about the lessons of me continuing to focus on the negative aspects, and that just sort of increases and balloons and can become a real problem at some point, as it has for me. And the advice that I would give is it's okay to feel how you feel, acknowledge whatever problems or perceived problems you think you have, and then make a decision. Can you fix the problem? And if so, then take steps to fix it. And if you can't fix the problem, then you can fix your attitude. So then take steps to fix your attitude. And those are really the 2 options that you have at the end of the day. And I understand that some people have real problems and real hardships, and they're dealing with tremendous loss and tremendous grief and struggles with addiction and all that. So I'm not trying to be flippant or make light of any of that kind of stuff. I'm talking about, in my experience and people that I know, if we have the opportunity to fix some of our problems or perceived problems, then let's do it. And if we can't, then let's try to fix our attitude about it and move on so we can become more positive, less negative, and cast more positive light rather than negative light to those around us and to the world. The sponsor I wish I had, as a sign of me aging, is Dr. Scholl's plantar fasciitis pain relief orthotic insoles. As I said, I've used those for a couple of years now. I've replaced them in almost all my shoes, including my workout shoes and even my Jordans, and they really, really comfortable. They provide a lot more support, a lot more stability. And I have a tendency to have my knees kind of move inward towards the center of my body, and that kind of creates a problem with my arch. So this kind of helps me stand more upright. The tip segment was about right sizing your cutting board and your knife. So if you have a small cutting board and a small knife, those are for strawberries and tomatoes and pears and oranges. If you have a big cutting board and a big knife, that's going to be for stuff like watermelon and squash and sweet potatoes. And I always say go up one size what you think for your knife and your cutting board. You want to have a good amount of space to work on, and that's going to help preserve your fingers from a safety aspect, and also make sure that you get the best yield out of the product that you're cutting up, and that you get even cuts as well. And the whisper in was Attractions 360. They are 2 brothers that have a YouTube channel and an Instagram account. I've been watching their YouTube videos for years. They take really awesome videos of theme park rides and attractions, and when they go to different locations like Vegas or New Orleans or overseas, or they do great hikes or whatever, and they record them and give you a very good point of view aspect of it, and it's a very proper amount of time. So it's not like some quick cut commercial kind of thing. Like, you get to actually sit and see it, and the camera moves slowly, so you really get a sense of kind of what you're going into. And that was helpful for me as our family went to Disney World a few months ago, and I was able to kind of check out ahead of time some of the rides to make sure our daughter wouldn't be too freaked out, or I wouldn't be too freaked out on that. So really fun stuff. And it's also cool just to see rides that you might not get a chance to see at Tokyo Disney or some other theme park that you probably won't ever get to or whatever. So that is it for this week's episode. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of the Story Lesson Advice Podcast, part of Saturday is Saturday Media. Thanks.